Into it.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, June 5th, 2022. We hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. We are back, and I am enjoying the outdoors today for another edition of Forward Maryland. My name is Bill Woodcock.
And I'm Steve Hunt. Hope everybody's having a good weekend. Beautiful weather. Get out there and enjoy it.
And Steve, I see you're wearing your AYBA baseball colors today because you're going to go coach. I am wearing the colors, since it's the NBA Finals, of the dearly departed Baltimore Claws of the ABA, who played in 1976. What was your favorite Claws memory, Steve? Or Steve Hunt, that is, not Steve Bolen. Steve Bolen, that's an unfair question.
You know what? I do not have a Claws memory. My ABA goes really to the old New York Nets with Dr. J, the Kentucky team, Denver Nuggets. So my Baltimore memories don't start until, the Bullets. So
well, the Kentucky Colonels should have been included in the merger with the NBA back in the 70s, as should St. Louis. But the Claws, it was a little bit of a trick question. They only ever played 2 games. They were both preseason games. Their fortunes, their finances went to crap when they had Dan Issel, who was big Nuggets forward, and that fell through. So they played 2 games, preseason games, in the Baltimore Civic Center, and then folded. Mm-hmm. So such is the fate of Baltimore basketball. So, but we have much better things to talk about today. It is our honor to welcome 2 Democratic candidates for the House of Delegates in District 9A, Stephen Bolen and Natalie Ziegler. If those are familiar names for you out there in viewer and listener land, it was because they were both candidates for House of Delegates in 2018. But they are back and running in the new District 9A. And so Steve and Natalie, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you both here. And it's a little bit of a unique thing for us to interview 2 guests at once. So, why don't you take turns talking with you, just sharing, for those of you who don't know you, a little bit about yourselves and about why you're running for the House.
Do you want to start, Steve?
Yeah, sure. So good morning. My name is Steve Bolen. As Bill and Steve both mentioned, I'm running for state delegate in District 9A. And as Bill just mentioned, that both Natalie and I were the Democrat primary winners in 2018. So that made us the Democrat nominees for the seat in 2018. I'm a former federal officer. I spent almost 27 years as a federal employee. I was a professional intelligence officer. It was my last post. I worked with counterterrorism, counterproliferation, and special military units. But before that, I was a researcher with NASA at the Human Spaceflight Center, where I helped launch and work on Space Shuttle Orbiter and International Space Station missions. And before that, I started my federal career as an engineer with the U.S. Air Force at Rome Air Development Center in upstate New York. But since retiring, I've been active in our community. One of the things that happened to me while I was working as an intelligence officer was I suffered some PTSD with some of the activities I was involved with. So after I left service, I got more actively involved with National Alliance for Mental Illness Howard County, which is NAMI Howard County. I'm actually on the board of directors for NAMI Howard County. I continue to serve our community. I'm the vice flotilla commander for my U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Unit. I am the vice chair for the Howard County Police Department Citizens Advisory Council. It's a council that was stood up by Chief Wayne Roby in the late 90s. I'm also on the Advocacy and Resources Committee for the Howard County Autism Society. Both my mom and my wife's mother taught children on the autism spectrum. They're both teachers. And my wife and I both know families in the community that have children who are autistic. So we very much support people on the spectrum and to try to help educate and get resources to people who need those resources. And that's about it. So I've been very active in the community, and it's going to be a competitive race. So I'm looking forward to, like Natalie was saying earlier before the show started, looking forward to doing some more door knocking and getting out, meeting people in the community.
Great. Natalie?
Hi, I am Natalie Ziegler. I am running once again for the House of Delegates in District 9A. I came very close to winning last time, so this campaign is fueled at least one part with frustration, and then really a desire to change the conversation in this district. So my background, my first career was in broadcast journalism. And in 2001, my husband and I started a jewelry manufacturing company called Commonwealth Imports. We sold to independent jewelers across the country, and we're still winding that down. And for the past 30 years, I've also managed a family farm. It's a feed grain farm. We also grow rye for Sagamore whiskey.
Mm.
And yeah, right. So
Know
the
that
party,
quite well.
yeah. So yes, that's been a great partnership. They're interested in doing an all Maryland rye, literally everything. The rye, the oak for the casks that it's aged in. The distillery is here. It's going to be entirely back to Maryland's past. We used to be a huge producer of rye, and
Mhm.
it would be fun to get that back. So essentially, I'm a small business owner, is the short way to wrap it up. I also have had many, many, many volunteer jobs in this community my whole life. I was a court-appointed special advocate for children in the foster care system for 5 years. I've taught literacy at South Baltimore Learning Center until very recently as a one-on-one tutor for adults who went through our somewhat inadequate educational system and still can't really read. I serve on the board of trustees of Howard Community College, and also have always been active in the community and care deeply about it, and think that we need more of a culture of continuous improvement among our delegates.
Mhm. Thank you both for your introductions and for giving us a flavor of why you're running. I'd like to talk a little bit about the district in which you're running, and I guess I can combine kind of two questions into one, because when you both ran the last time, and Natalie, as you so noted, you did extremely well, and I know Steve was right behind you in the vote count.
Yeah.
The old District 9A was Western Howard and part of Carroll County, as I recall, going up into the Skaggsville area. Not exactly, not Skaggsville. What it was like the Freedom area and those towns, those communities. Not exactly the most progressive portions of the state. And now in 9A, if I, looking at the map, you have parts of northern and northeastern Montgomery County. Talk with us a little bit about how you're finding the district to be different, and what makes you feel that this will be a winnable race for you.
Well, one thing I would say, it is very different. There's no question about that. Montgomery County and Carroll County are very different animals, and that's been very, very interesting for me. But I do want to say that while the district is different in terms of winnability, I think it's a little easier the way it is now. I don't see a gigantic change, honestly. Keep in mind, Katie Fry-Hester won the state Senate seat, and Steve and I came very, very close. So while I did win in Howard and Carroll was what cost me the election, it wasn't by much. So I don't think we're talking about some drastic, gerrymandered district set up to cost Republican seats, as has been alleged. I really don't.
Yeah, I agree with Natalie. I think this gerrymandering issue, I think it's a bit of a red herring. because as Natalie pointed out, Senator Hester did win her seat against, pretty tough challenger. I think this year it's a little bit, and she's right, the district is a little bit different. I have to admit it's a little bit different. But the difference between winning and losing, and just to go back one more time, that Natalie did beat, she would have been a delegate if it would have been just in Howard County vote. And I came within 200 votes of one of the other Republican delegates. So I was pretty close also. But I think the difference is this time is that we have an open seat. There's 2 delegates in District 9A. And as you guys all know, incumbents have a huge advantage in re-election. And one of the delegates decided to vacate to go run for Senate. So it leaves an open spot. And so that's an opportunity not just for Democrats, but also for Republicans on their side. And I think Natalie talked about this too. And there's 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and all 6 of us are going to have to work hard to earn a seat past the primaries and to win the general election. So I don't think it's a cakewalk. I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think the fact that there's an open seat is what makes it desirable for people wanting to run. And that what makes it doable for people to winning an election.
Yeah, I said Skaggsville. I meant to say Sykesville before in Carroll County,
Yeah.
but I think you're both right. I mean, it is truly a purple district and also and one that is in play for both parties. So I think Republicans will contest it, and it's an awesome thing to have great candidates like yourself in 9A. But I also think it presents terrific opportunity. Steve Hunt, my co-host Steve. I'd like to defer to you. I know you've been chomping at the proverbial bit to ask our guests a few questions.
Well, thank you, Bill, and thank you, Steve and Natalie, for joining us. As you guys know, and people who know me, who've heard me talk politics, at least in Howard County, they're probably sick of me talking about the West County because I just see a lot of opportunity out there. I saw it in 18 with the 2 of you, and it's certainly out there now, as Bill said. And yes, Bill, it is Sykesville. I was going to mention that because our baseball team has spent many a day at Freedom Park. So
yeah.
Way too familiar with Freedom Park at 8 a.m. on an October morning. But anyway, on to the good stuff. The first thing from a policy perspective that I want to ask the both of you about is the gas tax. That was, I would say, we could all safely assume that was the hot button issue. Price of gas is certainly skyrocketed due to a number of events. The past Maryland General Assembly passed a 30-day gas tax holiday. That was pushed in a bipartisan manner, most notably by current Governor Hogan and Comptroller running for governor now, Peter Franchot. When that was passed, there was a lot of talk about extending that. I know Comptroller Franchot was on our podcast, and he would have liked to have seen that go upwards of 90 days as far as that gas tax holiday. The General Assembly chose not to do that. So I want to get both of your take on the idea of the gas tax holiday, and should it have been extended beyond the 30-day period that the General Assembly passed?
Can I start?
You guys
So,
figure out who wants to go first.
yeah, right. I know. So this is a tricky one because, from an economist's perspective, the gas tax is not a solution to the problem. It really isn't. And not collecting it creates long-term problems. That said, yes, I would have voted to extend the gas tax holiday, and certainly would not want an increase in the gas tax, which is scheduled to go in. I would not want to see that. It is so hard for people on low incomes. It's even hard. I mean, it's hard for everybody, let's face it, but it really is for people who have to get to work, who we have lousy public transportation in this state. This is not an optional thing for most people. You need to drive your car. I guess in my perfect world, if I could just wave a magic wand, I would prefer to give gas cards to people below a certain income level rather than having a gas tax holiday. But I do think these are extraordinary circumstances. God willing, they are somewhat short term. And I would like to try and provide some help for people.
Great,
Yeah,
Steve.
but yeah, I agree with Natalie. I would have extended the gas tax at least through the Labor Day holiday, through the summer. And people don't realize, but there's two parts to the gas tax. There's the sales tax and there's the part that's tied to inflation. And unfortunately, inflation is very high right now. So I would wanted to look at maybe there's some limits to how much you can, the part can be raised due to inflation, can be raised due to inflation. But I would have looked at wanting to limit that, cap that a little bit lower, because I think Natalie's right. It's regressive to people in poor income situations. And I'd like to see a little bit more done holistically, not just gas tax, but inflation's really hurting the family budget right now. And I think and to open up the questions just a little bit bigger, it's just not gas. I think one of the other things we can do is to expand the earned income tax credit for hardworking families. And this is not a handout to those families because they're already working, they're already paying taxes. It's just allowed them to put more money in their pocket instead of putting into the government's pocket. And that would help with the burden of inflation all the way around, including gas and purchasing gas. But, you know, people need to purchase a lot of things, things for their children, things for their work and their households and food and that kind of stuff. So I think it's a bigger issue than just gas tax. But I would have at least extended the gas tax through the Labor Day holiday.
Great. Thank you both for those answers. And I appreciate you going beyond just the gas tax holiday, because one of my thoughts, and I believe we even mentioned it to Comptroller Francho, is what about those people who work from home, who take public transportation, who other means besides driving cars, who would not benefit from the holiday. So things like the earned income tax credit and some other measures, I really appreciate you putting those out there. So continuing on with the last General Assembly that was concluded, again, you guys there's one incumbent that you're going up against on the Republican side. At least one of you will get nominated in Trent Kittleman. The other one, as you mentioned, Reed Novotny running for Senate. I took a look, just to see what they were doing for District 9A in the past General Assembly. And I looked up Delegate Kittleman on the website. By the way, Maryland has a great website for searching through legislation. She put forward 7 pieces of legislation, none of which not only were not enacted, not only did not make it out of the House, never made it out of committee. And when I looked at her legislation, she seemed to focus on schools. She doesn't like unions very much. And she doesn't want disclosure on campaign finance reports. And then I also looked up, to be fair, Delegate Novotny. There was a little more there. He had some tax credits that I thought were pretty good, but he also had some things that seemed like they were going nowhere. So I guess my question, I'm leading the witness with the two of you, is your thoughts on some of the legislation put forward by Delegates Kittleman and Novotny, and what did they do to not only advance things and help people in the state of Maryland, but in particular your district?
So Natalie, if you don't mind, I go first.
Please.
Yeah. So let me make a general comment first. So Natalie and I both ran for this office in 2018. And when I did a lot of door knocking back then, one of the knocks that I heard about Delegate Kittleman is that she was not accessible. And there's a complaint that she wasn't really doing very much for her constituency. And so I don't know if they feel that way. I haven't knocked on any Republican doors or independent doors yet because of the primary. But I do know that the one piece of legislation that she put forward, which is House Bill 949, which really wanted to put a shield of secrecy around campaign finance contributions. I just think it's an egregious assault on democracy and transparency. I think that's the wrong direction. I think citizens want their government and their elected leaders to be more transparent, not less transparent. And I think knowing who's contributing to your campaign is one of those transparency issues. And so just on democracy, a vote for democracy alone, I don't know. I don't know how a delegate who's in a position of leadership and who is elected in a democratic process could want to tell the voters and the citizens out there that she doesn't want people to know who's contributing to her campaign. So I found that very objectionable. But moreover, the knock I heard, at least in 2018, when I was knocking the general election, was that her and the other Republican were just not accessible. And, if I'm fortunate enough to win, I plan to be a very accessible candidate or elected leader, and I plan to be a very open, transparent leader. And I'm putting out policy statements now ahead of the election so that people know where I stand before they vote, not after I vote or after they vote, because I think people ought to know. And if I'm the right voice to represent people based on my policy positions, people will vote for me. And if I'm not the right voice, then they'll vote for somebody else. But I think overall, and we see this, and I think we're becoming, and I hate to digress, Steve, because this is a good question, but we're getting more and more polarized in this country. And I think we have to be a little bit more honest with our electorate, tell them upfront who we are, what our policies are, so they know who they're voting for, and then stick to those policies once we get elected. And that's
Absolutely. I was very shocked when she proposed that legislation, and I agree with you, Steve. It's exactly the wrong direction, but it is very much a part of what we've seen as the Republican playbook, right? We're weakening the Voting Rights Act, weakening campaign finance reform. I mean, that's just been going on for years and is just a big part of what on the national level the Republican Party has been trying to do. And it really, I really feel strongly that it is absolutely the wrong direction for the country. As you say, Steve, voters have a right to know who is financing your campaign. We need to get so much of this money out of politics to start with. But yeah, I also feel that the current delegates have not particularly focused on our district and what the residents need. These education bills, I feel like the word parent is the code word of the moment. We have a voice for parents. We have parents for Dan Cox. There's a lot of this school board feeling about parents getting involved in schools, banning books, banning access to some books in library databases, on and on. And, first of all, it is nationalizing the race in a way that I think is not helpful. But furthermore, it's just heading in a direction that is anti-freedom and anti-democracy.
And so, yeah, Natalie, 100% right, Natalie, and I agree with you because we're being so partisan. And and I know, and we're all four of us are old enough to know when school was a partnership between parents and teachers and not this combative relationship. And I don't know how or when we started this combative relationship, but I know my parents took an active role in my education and they met with my teachers. And it wasn't all parents and all teachers. It was a collaborative effort to make sure I was learning what I was supposed to be learning. So we need to get back to that.
Absolutely.
No, thank you both for those answers. The next thing is that I want to get into is, we've looked back and that's all well and good because we certainly want to, you guys give the opportunity to, do a compare contrast, between yourselves and those who are running. And I'm sure if Senator Hester were here, she'd have a few things to say about now Delegate Novotny. But looking forward, can you guys, just touch on some of your priorities, should you be elected? Steve, I've heard some of your stuff online. I follow some of your stuff on Instagram. Natalie, I've seen some of the things you've put out. But if you could just touch on, a couple of priorities that you would have going into the 2023 Maryland General Assembly.
Well, certainly one of my priorities would be to take a look at what we can do to make Maryland a safe haven from what I see as an increasingly disturbing general conversation going on in the country in terms of women's reproductive rights. I think there is a lot that we need to do to enshrine our rights in the Maryland Constitution and also legally. I think that there's a lot that we can do in terms of voting rights, in terms of campaign finance reform. the big things that I think the Republican Party is trying to turn back the clock in a really, really bad way that I find quite frightening. You know, it always starts with book bans. It sounds like a silly thing, but it really isn't. And it's a distraction from so many of the things that are going on. I feel like we have been undermining some critical institutions in this country. We're undermining people's faith in elections at an alarming degree. We're undermining people's faith in our public health agencies. We're creating a situation where people no longer believe what they hear in terms of public health. So I would like to focus to some degree on making Maryland a safe haven. And then beyond that, to me, the biggest thing is the blueprint for Maryland's future. That is such a hopeful document and has so much promise in it to really bring opportunity to everyone. So I would really like to focus on implementing that, on accountability. And the piece of it I am most interested in is early childhood education.
Yeah, so yeah, I think Natalie has hit it right on the head, and it just shows you how thoughtful, competent leader she would be if she were elected. And so I'm hoping I get elected along with her. But I think a woman's right to choose is, as hard as that might be to say in this day and age, because we thought 50 years ago we had settled this, but it goes to show you that we always have to be vigilant. Things can change, and if you don't think that it can't change here, well, it can. So we have to make sure we're voting for people who will stand up and who will object to turning back the clock. And I think that's what's happening is people are trying to turn back the clock on a lot of things. I think a woman's right to choose is just one of those things, and we will see many more things if they are able to do that. I also think that we need to keep our kids in school safely. There was a lot of COVID learning loss, and there's some things we need to do to work with the teachers unions and parents and teachers to keep our kids in school. And specifically our younger kids and our special needs learners need to be in classroom learning. I'm an advocate for the Autism Society, and I know that people who are on the spectrum really need to be in classroom or hands-on learning. And we need to provide more early resources to people with special needs learners. There's a ton of studies out there that show that early diagnosis and intervention works best. We need to make sure there's more mental health services in our schools. We're facing almost a crisis in mental health care these days, and it maybe is post-pandemic a little bit, but I think it's also the direction our society is going. And I think you can see that with our politics is so divided, and I think that's just permeating through our whole family infrastructure. And I think we need to get back to more civility in this country. So we also need to make sure that our kids are getting the world-class education that they need, and all of our kids getting the world-class, because it's a very competitive global economy out there. And I'm not just talking about K through 12, but I'm talking about transition into further studies like college and even vocation training. Now, everybody's wants to go to college, but we need plumbers and electricians and people who are in the trade craft too. It's very vital for our long-term prosperity as a country, but now everybody needs to go to college too. And then the last thing is inflation. It's really hurting families right now all across the board. And maybe some people are able to weather the inflation issue a little bit better than others, but we need to make sure that at least our hardworking families are getting some inflation or relief from inflation. And I talked about the earned income tax credit, but on a larger scale, we need to make sure that our supply side is up and running. We saw a lot of empty store shelves during the pandemic, and it kind of caused a little bit post-pandemic inflation. We have a shortage of truckers across the country, almost 60,000 short and almost 100,000 in the next couple of years projected. We have hundreds of truckers shortage here in Maryland alone. And we forget that truckers and warehouse workers and dock workers are essential workers as much as anybody else is. And we need to make sure our warehouses are stockpiling and need at least enough supplies to take up short-term shock of supply disruptions instead of just being processing centers. So there's a lot that needs to be done. And Natalie pointed this out, that our Republican colleagues, I think, have not been up to the job the last few years, at least in District 9A, to help make sure their citizens are thriving. And I think we need to change that direction. I think we need to have people who are a little bit more in touch with the citizens out here in Western Howard County and now Northern Montgomery County, and who want to actually help and serve them and not just sit in their offices and be a state delegate.
Well, thank you both for those very in-depth answers. I actually had a bonus question on the blueprint, but Natalie, nailed that one. Steve, you were right behind that. So I am good. Bill, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And Natalie and Steve, I am frankly amazed at the last 10 or so minutes of this podcast. I don't really talk about it that much anymore, but back in prehistory, that otherwise known as 1998, the 31-year-old vice chair of the Democratic Party in Howard County, Bill Woodcock, ran for delegate in the old District 14B. The boundaries of which look really kind of similar to 9A now. And and so of course this district, and it's since changed from 14 to 9, has been of special interest to me. And what I heard both of you articulate so very well, better than I have and better than any other candidate who had run since then, and there's been a few in this district, are two things. One, what action can be taken now by delegates who are involved and engaged in their community for the benefit of the people of District 9A? And I did not hear Democratic talking points any more than I heard Republican talking points. I mean, what I heard was common sense and practical solutions that are people oriented. The second thing is this: we used to have a Republican state senator in Howard County named Sandy Schrader, who would make a claim that every piece of legislation that gets submitted in the General Assembly costs $20,000. No idea how she came up with that calculation, but I assume that's the staff time, that's the, maybe the lights to run the legislative office buildings. I have no clue. But what you both have done, and especially Steve Bolen, I commend you for this, is really shine a light as to what the Republican brand is to people in Western Howard County, Ellicott City, Northeast Montgomery County. Their brand is junk. Their brand is broad brush. Democrats are mean. Democrats are bad people. We're just the stalwarts trying to protect conservative values. But everything I heard you two say over the past 10 minutes spoke very well to values, and spoke very well to the values of watching out for each other, caring about each other, which is what just good people in the community should do and what representatives should do. So I'm really in awe. No, and that's not too strong a word to use in how well I believe you two have captured the heart of the district, the values of the district, and I can't wait to see you both in Annapolis. But we've got to get you there. And so
this is why I've been talking about this district and these guys for 4 flipping years, and why I pushed for this show, because this is important stuff, and these guys bring it, man. So
yeah, so we got to get you there. So how can we? So I believe you're running together in a coordinated fashion. I'm not sure how, if there's an official team or such thing, but how can we help you? This is your time to shamelessly plug and self-promote. How can people get a hold of your campaigns, your websites, any events that you have coming up, any such thing?
Go ahead, Steve, because yours is tomorrow. I mean, not tomorrow, Tuesday.
Yeah, so very, very timely here. So I just want to go back and make a comment about some of the things you just said, Bill, because Natalie and I are not running on sound bites. We're running on practical solutions for the every average day person that needs our help. And we want to be out there helping people, and we want to be accessible to people. I know Natalie is, and I'm going to be accessible to people too. So one of the things is, you can go to my website, bolen4md.com, BOLENFORMD.com, to learn more about my campaign. I'm also all over social media, so you can follow me there. But like Natalie said, I have a reception coming up Tuesday, this week, June 7th at 5:30 p.m. at Manor Hill Brewing. And everybody within the sound of my voice now, wherever your podcasts reach, if you're a Democrat, you are very welcome to show up. Have fun. It'll be a good time. We've got some exciting guest speakers, and you'll be thrilled to kind of learn more about my campaign and what I'm doing out there. But it's true, Bill, that Natalie and I are compassionate, caring people, and we want to help people, and we're going to be accessible to the people, and that's what you'll get if you vote. And I don't think that we're coordinating our campaign. I think we just happen to be very complementary with each other, because there is another person running, in our district as a Democrat too. So it's not that we're coordinating our campaign. I just think we have a lot of complementary areas that we kind of overlap on.
Very good. Excellent. Natalie, your turn.
I would agree with that. Thank you so much for your kind words. I really appreciate it. And for running as well. My website is nataliefordelegates.com, and I have an event coming up on the 27th at a restaurant in Clarksville called Bushel and a Peck. It is on the top of the Clarksville Commons shopping center. And it would be wonderful. Anybody would like to come, that would be fantastic. It would be a big help. You can sign up to volunteer on my website. I need people to stand at the polls for early voting. If you want to write postcards, if you want to come door knock with us, whatever you would like to do, there's a job to accommodate everybody. And yeah, I guess I would like to say that it's true. Steve and I I think very much along the same lines. I think we both see the possibility in government and don't regard it, as Reagan once said, as the problem. We do regard it as a solution, not to everything, and legislation isn't a solution to everything. But certainly, if you want to be a legislator, you need to at least see the possibilities of the things that we could do. It's a way of pooling resources to do things that no single person or company could do. It's a way of making sure that we protect the most vulnerable in our society. It's a way of setting up the architecture of our world such that we provide the most amount of opportunity for the biggest number of people. And that's what I'm hoping to do for our district and the state of Maryland.
Outstanding. And Steve, by the way, you will see me on Tuesday. I haven't responded yet, but I already have it planned. Natalie, I have to check on the 27th. I think that's a Monday, but I think I'll be there too. But I want to thank you both. And Steve, do you have any final words? Because I want to give a little bit of a preview of some of the great things we have planned this month.
No final words. Just again, thank you to Steve. Thank you to Natalie for stepping up not once, not twice, not once, but twice to run in what is a very, very challenging district for a Democrat. I mean, you are brave souls. And as a lifelong Democrat, I certainly appreciate you guys stepping to the table there. I will not be there on Tuesday because my son plays baseball on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Mondays are my good days. So Natalie, you may well see me on the 27th. So that's all I've got. Bill, I'll let you close this thing out. Thank you.
Yeah,
both.
everyone should support these two candidates, and there's a great third candidate. His name is Chow Wu. He's also a friend of the podcast. He's been on, but the point is that 9A is a huge opportunity for Democrats to pick up in the state legislature. And as we kind of have a theme this month with our podcasts, we really have to support the purple areas, and we really have to turn those more blue. And we do that with people-oriented practical solutions. So today you've just heard out there in podcast land two terrific candidates who can do that for you. And that continues for the next 2 weeks. On Sunday, May 12th, we talk with Delegate Heather Bagnall from District 33 in Anne Arundel County, who is facing a re-election campaign in her very purple area. So we'll talk with her about that. And then the following weekend, we will visit with Monica Biddix, who is the founder of Workhorse Strategies, a Democratic political firm that does work in North Carolina, Iowa, I believe Tennessee, as well as the state of Maryland. And we will talk about how Democrats are being viewed in areas that are not necessarily urban or suburban, and what can we do to help alter those perceptions. So it's Purple Month this month here on the podcast. So for Steve Hunt, my name is Bill Woodcock. I would like to thank you for watching or viewing this podcast program. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everybody. Take care.